there YouTube, Big G, back again with another video, and this time a little bit of a ramble. A question was posed the other day by Novabug, and I actually watched the video response to that question on one of the other channels. I think it was the Highlanders channel, on Voter's channel, and that was nostalgia. The current generation, more or less how the question went, was that the current generation, will they have the same nostalgia for the machines that they're playing, the consoles they're playing at the moment, in 15 years from now, as what we have at the moment, harkening back to the days when we had their first consoles and computers out there? Will it be to the same degree? Will the nostalgia still be there? And the short answer of it is yes, I think there'll always be nostalgia. Whenever you think back at any happy part of your life, and let's be honest, the happiest times of our life is normally when you are stress-free, and that is normally teenage years. Well, I don't know about nowadays, the kids now have got a lot more to stress about than what we had when we were growing up, but those stress-free happy days is what you liken to a happy time, and anything that you enjoyed back then that you see now automatically has a nostalgic response. So there will be nostalgia, but I don't think it'll be to the same degree as what we currently have. And the reason for that, for me, is quite simple. You know, we had more choice back then. So growing up, there was consoles available. You had your Nintendo, the NES, clones here in South Africa. There were Segas, but consoles were very expensive. You only the wealthy really had consoles off the shelf. The games were very expensive, and I mean, it was just an expensive hobby. So most of us, I'm talking about my, you know, where I grew up and my circle of friends, we had one of the 8-bit computers. Now, I owned this little one, Spectrum 48K, fantastic little machine, cheaply made, mass-produced. I love this little machine. And, you know, those that owned the Spectrum, we thought it was the best thing since sliced bread. Then you had your Commodore 64 crowd. You know, they had a real keyboard, and they had a SID chip, and they had this and that, and they believed theirs was the best machine that was around there. Then you had those that were slightly different. I also owned at a later stage one of these, a Spectra Video 328. Those were sort of the machines that were around my school and what I grew up with. And if you had a Spectra Video, you also had a great keyboard, and you had the best basic that was out there, because you could quickly write little games. Or I never wrote a game, but I could move sprites around, I could play little tunes and so forth. But then you had limited games available. So whichever machine you had, you would brag to your friends about its good attributes, and you would secretly yearn for those machines that you either couldn't afford or didn't have. I mean, I can remember seeing Ghostbusters for the first time on the Commodore 64 and saying to my friends, crap game. Meanwhile, inside I was going, wow, listen to that music. It was fantastic. Whereas I'm sure that they were looking at the Spectrum games, because there were thousands of Spectrum games. And obviously software piracy was rife back then. So those guys that owned a console would look at the computer owners and say, oh well, okay, I've got 3 games on my NES clone, and a Spectrum owner or a Commodore 64 owner would have thousands of games, so you get huge choice. So every machine and standard and different configuration out there had its pros and cons, and there was so much choice. And I think that's why the current generation of collectors you know, are almost fanatical about collecting and wanting to experience what we had back in the day. Because simply put, you know, I'm not happy just having a Spectrum. I want a Commodore, I want a Spectra Video, I want, and you can see here I've actually got it set up because I was playing it a little bit earlier. MSX machine, there I was playing Road Fighter, a cartridge game. Behind me over here there's Ataris, there's Commodore Amigas, there's Amstrads, there's all sorts, as well as all the consoles. Because basically, you know, I want to play all those that I couldn't own back in the day, because now they are available. So the current generation, and I look at my son as a prime example, he grew up through school with a PC and never interested in any of my old machines over here. He did have a PlayStation 2, didn't like it, turfed it. He owned a PlayStation 4, turfed it, didn't like it. Basically he's an avid PC player. There's no other standard of computers out there today. It's not like you've got games on the DC and you've got games on the Apple systems and some other systems, and you sort of like rivalry amongst them. doesn't exist anymore. You're either a PC platformer or you're a console platformer. Even amongst the consoles, basically you only got three: Nintendo, and you've got Microsoft, and you've got PlayStation. Those are the three that you have. There's nothing else out there. Back in my day, there was a host of different competing platforms and clones, etc., 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 that was available. So yeah, nostalgia will always exist, but definitely won't be to the same degree when it comes to actually collecting it. Do I foresee this generation now, in 20 years time, wanting to collect all the PlayStation 4 stuff and having a complete PlayStation 4 collection? I somehow don't think so. I foresee my generation in 15 years time having a PlayStation 4 complete collection, because I think that's just because we've been molded in that sort of vein. We now collectors, we now have the full picture of how computers and consoles were from the start, and we'll keep on with it right up until the end. So yeah guys, sorry for a bit of a ramble, but that's my answer to nostalgia, current versus the future generations. Well, cheers from me guys, and yeah, keep it retro.